sitting around the studio and we're talking to Timothy Galbraith. How's it going, Tim?
Good.
Is it Timothy or Tim? What do you prefer?
Tim, I suppose.
Yeah, Timothy's like for like 9-year-olds, right?
Yeah, Tim, Timmy, Timothy, I've heard it all, but I guess when I introduce myself, it's Tim.
So today we're talking about personal issues in our lives, and I mean, of course, I don't like to air mine, but you're one that got there and air yours, and there's a big struggle going on in your life right now, and maybe we'll start going into this. And you just told me about it before we went on here to talk about it, and what obstacles and struggles are you having right now, Tim?
Well, I have an addiction, a heroin addiction, a crack addiction, just in short, a drug addiction. And it's not a struggle that's going on right now per se, but it's something I've dealt with for a long time. I'm 35 years old right now. I believe I was 14 years old the first time I smoked weed, drank. By the time I was 15 years old, I was using LSD. I got into opiates probably in my early 20s, and I've been using heroin on and off pretty steadily for about 5 years now. So it's not necessarily the struggle with that addiction that brings me here today so much as the consequences that it's created in my life in recent times, kind of catching up with me and motivating me to hopefully change. They say every person that struggles with an addiction has to reach their own bottom in order to recover and take steps to move forward. And I think I've reached that point. I've definitely experienced and created my share of pain, and I'm hopeful that I can put this behind me and maybe in so doing help out other people or just shine a light on the nature of addiction and some of the challenges that go along with it, specifically perhaps with the way it's impacting people here in Flint.
See, I'm somewhat sympathetic to people going through addictions. I mean, because it's so common in our society, especially the Flint area. I mean, as you attest, and we were talking, and you could see the area where the studio is at. There's like it's no secret. It's a den of iniquity, basically, for drug use, drug sales, and I would say probably roughly in the east side, I'd say probably 80% of the population here is currently using some illicit form of drug. And the one thing I always wanted to ask, and I'm going to be kind of hard on you. I mean, I'm going to ask you some hard questions about this. It's like, it's like the information's been out there about what caused, don't just say no. And it's been mocked because Nancy Reagan said it. When it does, I never heard anybody ever start out their life story saying, my life was totally meaningless until I started using coke, crack, insert drug of choice. And you've heard the horror stories, obviously, growing up in an era where there's television, movies. They highlight this stuff. I mean, what makes a person who starts using drugs, illicit drugs, especially? Because, I mean, most people would be sympathetic if it was a prescription drug and got out of hand. They just couldn't find themselves dealing with life without it. But when when you're dealing with kind of the underbelly of society, to obtain this drug, I mean, what's in your, is there any kind of thinking going on about how to, I'm really putting myself in peril, not only using this drug, but also in the obtaining of this drug? I mean, is that kind of a barrier, or does it seem like just the desire to feel high overrides that?
That's something I hope to understand better. I've gone through my share of counseling in the last few years. I'm trying to find someone else, maybe a psychiatrist, to dig into that sort of thing a little bit more deeply. It's hard to answer. Not everyone would do it. I don't know what pushed me that far. I mean, I grew up in a great home. My parents have been married 40 years. I have two brothers, one older, one younger. They're great. Everything's been great. I'm someone who's been blessed with a lot of gifts, and I've managed to squander a lot in my pursuit of drugs. I don't know. I've really had nothing to gain other than like a short-term numbing of emotions and everything to lose. What drove me that far? I mean, it's the nature of addiction, the disease, the obsession, kind of adhering to my own code of morality. And I found in doing that, I just kept pushing the line further and further as far as what I was willing to do in order to obtain drugs, to use drugs. You know, it just begins maybe initially with the decision to not pay a bill, to let the cable bill run a month behind, to eventually, at some point along the way, being willing to steal from someone you love, or from a business, from whatever. Just constant compromise of my own integrity until basically I had none. And so why I've been willing to put myself in such precarious situations, and I've certainly been in my share of dangerous ones. It's amazing that I haven't had any kind of significant legal consequences. The amount of driving I did up and down I-75 or around the neighborhood as a mule, so to speak, transporting drugs just so I could get a cut. It's hard to understand that too. It's hard to understand how I've avoided health consequences, that I've survived, that I'm free today. So I don't know. I don't know everything that's pushed me as far as I went. I'm very grateful that I have an opportunity today to change, though. That there hasn't been anything in my life to date that's insurmountable.
Yeah, I mean, you seem like they have it seems like if your family, are they supportive of you as much as they can be now? And did you do something? Did you steal from them already?
Oh yeah, I mean, my family's been incredibly supportive to the point where they've been chastised for enabling. Yeah, totally. And my dad, that's something, he just hasn't had it in his heart to just disown me, or not disown me, but I'm living under his roof right now, and he certainly could ask me to leave, and he would have by now. I have a 6-year-old, soon to be 7-year-old son named Julian, who I'm very close with. I actually, certainly it's going to be hard as he gets older to explain some of this to him, and it's one of my great fears in life is that, from a genetic standpoint, he likely has the predisposition to this sort of thing, and even though I'm certainly trying to shield them and insulate them from this sort of life as much as possible, it's becoming increasingly hard no matter where you live, whether it's Flint or in the suburbs these days, to do that. And I certainly wasn't introduced to drugs by my upbringing. It was something I sought out and found on my own. So
now, was it music you listened to, or the people like behind the music? I know a lot of guys I knew would smoke a lot of dope growing up because of these band members that they were enamored with to some degree, or looked up at as heroes, were doing drugs, and it was like basically they're following that kind of negative role model. Was that something like that that played a role for you? Or?
No, initially not at all. And I was a freshman in high school when I first started to dabble in drugs, and I remember the first time that I smoked a joint. I was sitting on the dumpster with my 3 best friends outside of elementary school in St. Clair Shores, and one of the kids had already done. I think two of the 4 of us already had, but I was the holdout. I didn't want to do it. Didn't want to smoke cigarettes. I was like a part of a youth group and all that. I didn't want to do it. Those guys were like my best friends for years. And finally, I just broke down. It was totally a peer pressure thing. I broke down. I did it. They convinced me, and I loved it. I mean, I just took to it like a fish to water. Once I got that taste of it, there's debate about whether or not marijuana is addictive. I don't know if it is or not, but I know like immediately that's what I wanted. I wanted more of it. As soon as I smoked that first joint, I became preoccupied with it. I lost interest. I'd been like on the basketball team as a freshman in high school. I played baseball. I had a lot of positive activities and people in my life, but as soon as I did that, that was certainly a major fork in the road looking back. When I made that decision, it was more than just a decision how to spend that afternoon. It was unknowingly, to me at the time, a choice about what kind of life I was going to live from that point forward.
So you did get progressively worse. I mean, your choices of drugs more harmful, obviously. I mean, did you use prescription drugs or?
Yeah, that's where like the major problem really began. Was I was 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, I was working at a group home outside of Detroit, and I injured myself on the job. And I dislocated my knee for the second time. The first time I had done it a few years before playing basketball, and I don't know if I have a ligament that's in not such good shape or what, but it popped out. I had to go to the ER for them to put it back in, and they shot me up with Demerol and sent me home with a script of Vicodin. So that kept me high around the clock for about a week. At that point in my life, I wasn't really smoking pot. I was going out after work and drinking a little bit, but the ramifications of my use were minimal. Nobody would have thought I had a problem. I had everything seemingly under control, and didn't think I had a problem either. But once I got the opiates in my system, I started in short order obtaining them illegally. I would sell them. I would do whatever I could to fund my habit. And within a year, in the summer of 2004, I had to confront the fact that I had a legit addiction. I mean, I was sick. I had to go through a week worth of withdrawals, which were pretty rough, pretty awful, down in the basement of my parents' house in suburban Flint. And that's kind of characterized the nature of my use for the last decade now. It's just gotten progressively worse from that moment where it was no longer about any kind of social activities, peer pressure, none of that. It was a very private pursuit.
Well, see, I think drug use does basically have different social attachments to it. I mean, like, marijuana, I've seen obviously people pass around a joint, which always kind of disgusts me because you'd have these guys, putting their lips around a end of a, burning joint. Then just pass from another guy. Basically, it's like, why don't you just kiss and get it over with? I mean, I always thought I was kind of grossed out by that. Is when I was a kid, I saw people doing that, in the junior high schoolyard, and well, actually, in the school I went to, they're actually doing it right in the school. But there's different ways of the drugs are actually used for each type of drug. I mean, now you're a heroin user. I mean, did you use the injectable form?
I've never done that. It's always been, I've always snorted it.
Yeah, snorted it.
And I think that's increasingly prevalent. I'm actually surprised to see.
Well, the dirty needles obviously is a concern.
Yeah, I think you're at a greater. This could be naive thinking on my part, but I think you're at a greater risk of overdose if you shoot. I always personally felt safer by snorting it. I didn't have a death wish or anything. I just wanted to feel better, so to speak. So, one thing they say though in NA and just in the recovery community is that I haven't done it yet, and if I were to continue down the path that I was on, a needle could be my future. So. It's pretty. Go ahead.
Some people seem like they get addicted to the process of, pulling the drug into the syringe, shooting them, injecting themselves. I mean, the guys from like Motley Crue was talking about that. They was Nikki Sixx or something.
Yeah.
He when he was out of drugs, he was injecting himself with just pure alcohol.
Oh.
Not pure alcohol, but drinking alcohol like whiskey. I mean, I've heard of several stories. I mean, I've heard of people in this area doing that. I mean, it was like they actually get off, for lack of a better term. Doing, they're riding the spike,
It's that Pavlov's dog sort of thing, like the ringing of the bell, the dogs start barking because they know the food's coming. And I really would enjoy the feeling of the heroin getting into my nostril and trickling down the back of my throat. It's like the first time you do it, it's disgusting and horrible. But as you develop a habit of use or whatnot, that becomes part of the whole ritual, and you do begin to look forward to it and enjoy that. Just some of the secondary characteristics of the drug use itself.
So I know that one of the members of the Go-Go's. I don't know if I'm not going to say the name, but I know it's one of the members. She's the first time she tried heroin. She says, "This is what I want to feel for the rest of my life." And it's like I've heard that from other heroin users that basically it's got this warm fuzzy cocoon. They're safe. Everything out there is harsh, and they don't want to ever leave that feeling. And it's very seductive. I mean, it's like in a heroin too. I mean, it's like the opiate. And when they smoke the opium, there's obviously everything. It has a detrimental effect to your body over a prolonged period. But when you're dealing with an illicit source of this drug, heroin. I mean, heroin actually doesn't have a legitimate use medically. Morphine does,
Right.
But not heroin. It's because it's so adulterated with God knows what. Plus the risk you're doing with injecting it. The ulcerations and abscessing, and I've seen some horrific stuff develop around that. I don't know if you've seen the movie Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah.
Very stark. I mean, I had a friend who was a heroin addict, and she said she was drawn to that movie because it was so brutally honest what the whole thing was about. And she said it was just, it was so harsh in some ways, and so it also had a kind of an odd appeal to her, that movie itself. Because I guess that's how well it effectively portrayed the use. And it was, I mean, if anybody's seen the movie, you don't know what we're talking about. If they haven't, I don't know if I'd want to recommend the movie because it's not going to make you feel great about the world after seeing it. I mean, but it's I think it's probably a very honest account. I mean, I don't think it was like, I mean, we used to see these drug films, like somebody smoking marijuana, and it was like from the characters of Dragnet. They used to show in high school, junior high, and these beatniks were smoking weed, and because they were so high on weed, their baby drowned. Well, anybody who could be on the phone long enough could leave their baby behind and get killed, die in the bathtub because they drowned. But we always thought that was a little bit over the top. But the Requiem for a Dream was very. I mean, I've been around enough addicts to know that that's not that bizarre of a characterization. So I mean, I don't. Would you ever recommend that movie to anybody, or?
No, I mean, well, anybody, yes, maybe. Most people, probably not. It is a pretty unsettling movie.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember, it definitely had an impact on me when I did. There is something to be said about me seeing some sort of adventure in the lifestyle for a while. It got old really quick. I probably, it was a side of life I hadn't seen, and just being, a kid from the suburbs, and then being in the city and seeing just the way people lived. And I really empathize with them. I mean, on both sides of the trade, whether people are using or dealing, like I kind of understand, I feel like, why people make some of those choices, because it's really easy to feel shut in the city of Flint with no hope, and it could be anywhere, but just Flint's where I have experience, and to feel like you really don't have much in the way of options. I see why people feel like they're willing to risk as much as they are to get high or to make money selling what they do, because the alternatives that are presented to them aren't so great necessarily, or don't appear to be.
But I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and she'd been through she was a heroin addict, and she was through rehab. She relapsed. She went through rehab again. She came out of it. She was really dealing with it, and one of her friends she had been in rehab with relapsed seriously, ended up ODing, and at the funeral, the dealer who sold him the drugs showed up there. And I said, well, God, how would he have the guts to do that? And she goes, thing is, nobody forces this on us. And we go to these people. And she goes, I said, I'd be outraged that, if the family knew this was the dealer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but, I didn't ask her that, but I mean, she told me the dealer was there, and I went, how could you even want to be in the same presence with this guy? I said, I don't see it. That escapes all of us, because, I mean, anybody who's not addicted to something like that, the rationalization to justification process to us seems like totally skewed, totally bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like almost, and sometimes when anger crops up in me, it's like, why the F are you doing this to yourself, to everybody else around you? I mean, now when you're going through recovery, I know most approaches, like the 12-step programs, have you make a list of people who you've damaged, and to go through and have to address. Now that's got to be gut-wrenching, because they're going to ask you why you did this to them. Why you stole from them, why you lied, why maybe you beat them. And you're almost like, how can you justify what you did to these people? And you're coming to them basically with the explaining to them, and then now wanting their kind of forgiveness. I mean, you got to understand if some people didn't willingly offer or give their forgiveness for what your actions were.
Yeah, I mean, I went to rehab personally almost 3 years ago, and that was probably maybe the first time in my life that I took an honest stab at getting clean and staying clean. And so I had a little bit of experience. I've never worked a, quote, fourth step where you tend to do that sort of thing. But I have had a little bit of experience trying to have those talks with people and explain some of the decisions I've made. You know, one of the best talks I've had has been with my older brother, Andy, because taking you back to the time I was a teenager in high school, when I was smoking weed, I used to steal his cassette tapes, and I would take them up to a used record shop in St. Clair Shores called Car City, and I'd sell them, and he had stacks of tapes, and I'd just take like 2 or 3 to get enough. You know, I'd get like $5 and go buy a joint, but it would get me through that day. And so having that conversation with him and seeing like how far back these patterns of behavior that I've established really go, like there's no, you know, I mean, all of my adult life, this is something I've battled. Most of my life, period, the majority of it, this is something I've battled. So it's not like anything I can solve very easily. It's not anything I can explain very easily to people. I don't expect forgiveness in many cases. I don't always get it. I've been thankful when I have, but then again, sometimes I've hurt some people over and over. And when I think about some of these conversations that I really need to have to apologize with people, like, you know, I got to have one with my grandmother. And I know she'll forgive me. I know she will. That's not the issue with her. But it's still going to be hard. And the hardest one of all is to think about my son. You know, I mean, just the time that I should have spent with him as opposed to sitting on a street somewhere in the north end of Flint waiting for somebody to show up and drop some money off or drop some drugs off to me is a disservice to him. The fact that I don't have money saved up for him to go to college because I've blown it all is a disservice to him. So, you know, there's definitely some wild cards in my future as to how people are going to receive me and my recovery.
Hold on, okay, for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was at the door.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. I'm listening to you though, and I'm hearing this, and it's like, I gotta be honest. I told you I'm gonna be honest about it. If you're a family member and did this to me, you stole from me, you put yourself in peril. I'd basically want to put your head through a wall. I mean, I'm serious, because I mean, it's something you know. I mean, you know, like I said, it's never had a fairy tale ending. You know, I never heard anybody's life being improved by use of this stuff.
Right.
And everybody else knows this, but it's just, you know, and it's like, you know, I'm sorry if I sound like a little bit irritated, but I've been around this. I'm 50 years old. I've been around this a bulk of my life. People using not just, you know, illegal drugs, but alcohol and stuff like that. I mean, brutal. I mean, my family owned a bar. My dad's family owned a bar. So I mean, sometimes I wonder what kind of demons are following us, or what, you know, because we profited off of that to some degree. You know, of course, we didn't twist their arm. We didn't force it. It was a legal substance. Doesn't make them automatically right, though. But when you're actually, sometimes you're just like, you know, you've done this, and you've done this to yourself, but does it, the horror story potential for this ever come to the forefront of your mind? The train wreck that could have happened.
Yeah.
Or can happen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every single time I've done it, I've felt guilt. Like throughout the process, you know, I felt guilty about even making the phone call. I felt guilt while I've been in the car driving to go get it. You know, I mean, there's just like an albatross of like shame and guilt around me that I've carried for a while, but it hasn't stopped me. Yeah.
So now that you're in the process of recovery, how many for this current round of recovery or this current series of rehab attempts? What's this make, second or third time for you, or?
Oh no, I mean I don't know. I don't even know how to quantify that. I went to rehab one time.
Yeah.
How many like serious attempts? I don't know. Maybe this is the first. I don't know. Maybe it's the second or third. I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer that one.
Do you really think that? Do you think that this is going to be effective? Do you want to make it effective? I mean, how bad do you want this?
I don't know how to answer that either, John. I mean, I think I do. It's
Well, okay, you got a child.
right.
How old is he or she?
He'll be 7 soon.
Okay, do you want him to have a dad in the future?
Yes.
So you know that much.
Right.
But are you really committed to doing what it takes so he can have a dad in the future?
I hope so.
Okay.
You know, I know this is like a cop-out answer, right? I'm trying to do things.
Because I'm going to make an observation, and forgive me if it sounds very judgmental.
No, go ahead.
But it seems like you're sitting there and you're talking about it, but there's this kind of detachment about it. Now, sometimes it happens as a traumatic thing. It happens in people's lives. It's so traumatic they can't deal with it, and they put this like barrier up. They can see it through and they can describe it, but there's not impacting on them emotionally. That's the best way I can come up with. And it seems like it's going on with you. I mean, there's like you affected other people's lives. You adversely affected your own, and yet I don't know. Maybe I expect something more from like more of an emotionalism for you, or more
I have kind of a flat affect.
Yeah, that's what's coming across as.
And that's just, I think, my disposition to some extent, probably also because I'm sitting here and this
Right.
is a little bit
Foreign
territory for me. I don't want more of the same.
Right.
I don't want to hurt people. I've never wanted to hurt people. That's never been my MO, my agenda. I certainly want to be in my son's life, not just for him, but for myself. I want to have a future. There are a lot of things I would like to accomplish and like to do. And, I don't want my legacy to ultimately end up what it would be if it ended today. I'm grateful that I have an opportunity to change when I'm not more quick to say, yes, I want to get better. I'm committed to this whole process. It's because, I have 5 days clean today. I'm dealing with the obsession still. And so I feel like a liar to be like, yes, I want to be clean for the rest of my life. If I just if I try to present myself as being wholeheartedly committed to that idea, I feel like a liar. And it's because my dad drove me here to the studio. My dad will drive me home. And if he didn't, there's a good chance I would get lost somewhere between and end up somewhere I shouldn't be, doing something that I shouldn't do. So the fact that he is here driving me, maybe that's a sign of my commitment now. Go ahead.
Because there's a point in people's lives. I mean, my friends went through addiction. I also have friends who are dealing with addicts as counselors, as therapists. They said basically a lot of times you got to get to the point where you remove the possibility for them erring out of their hands, and basically hold that power over them until they start to recognize that power does exist in their own life, and eventually it's going to have to be given back to them, and then that's all upon them. And this is all on you. This is all on you. You got the support system, and I'm not an expert in addiction, but I mean, if my family member was doing this, or doing drugs, and they're facing addiction, or they were addicted, I'd be furious. I got to be honest. I mean, to me, it's like, and I know this is not rational because I've dealt with it. I know the scientific evidence. I know the clinical approach would say otherwise. But it's like, I know that initially it is under volitional activity, but after it's gone to a certain stage, the addiction is a disease-like, because it's then in nature, because it gets worse. It gets progressive, unchecked. It gets worse. But I mean, I'm serious. If my kid, my wife, my whatever came and I found out there, I mean, the first response would be like I said, I would want to put their head through a wall, because I mean, it's like, this is in your power and you could stop this. And I'm brutally honest about that. I mean, I couldn't imagine doing this to the family members. I couldn't imagine. To me, it's like it's a it was the way I was raised. It's kind of a your personal failing. You're being an immoral person by doing this. I mean, that's my thing. Now, I'm not saying that's right. On the clinical approach to it, I know that's probably error of that or is, but I just I would have an anger that would probably be very very palpable. If you're my family member, I'd want to kick you from one side of the county to the next. Quite truthfully, that's because that's when my family dealt with stuff like this. I mean, if you did this, you knew you were going to have this potential. Then why the hell did you engage in it?
Yeah, I'm sure I've dealt with some people I've dealt with some anger coming back toward me for the decisions I've made, and it's I understand it. I don't know what to say about that other than all I can say in a lot of situations is I'm sorry. And I know I'm sorry doesn't mean anything to anybody, but it's like all I can say. Like, I am sorry. I can truly tell you I don't want to hurt you. I didn't want to hurt you, and I'm sorry that I did. But I have to cut it off there because, again, if I say much more, then, I try to answer the questions. When I have those conversations, if people want answers, I try to answer them honestly. But I don't have, I'm not trying to, make a case and defend myself you
can't rationalize it.
No,
it is what it is.
Yeah, I try not to beat myself up, but I'll be like, I'm a scumbag. I suck. I'm a terribly immoral person. I've made countless bad decisions. I've put myself before you time and time again. I've stolen from you. I've lied to you. I've destroyed your trust for me. I can't even think of a redemptive quality that I have to point to in this moment. And I've been through it a lot. And I don't, it's my life. That's where I'm at, and all I can do is try to change that going forward. I don't know how else to handle that. With the decisions other people make based on the decisions I made. I don't fault them for it. Anybody who wants to walk away from me, or even people who would stick by me, but I know they'll never fully trust me again, or I've still damaged our relationships. I've compromised them. I can't do anything about it.
The feeling I'm getting from you, though, it's basically by saying anything else, you're making a commitment that you don't know at one level you can safely fulfill. You're saying basically I can't make this promise. I mean, rather than say I'm sorry, you said it'd be, the impression I'm getting is basically to say anything more would be a commitment, and to me it's a commitment that to be clean and sober, to go for that direction. To me, I'm hearing, and I'm sorry if this sounds really harsh, but I'm a BS. I pick up on stuff, and I grew up around this neighborhood and the city. To me, it's like you're not willing to make that commitment yet to yourself, and you don't want to come across faults to somebody else. If you said it, you'd be lying to yourself, which is an insanity. You really can't lie to yourself. I mean, you might try to cover it, you might try to mask it. Usually, it involves justifications. You've already got to the point where you can't offer a justification for what you do, what you've done, whatever. But you yourself, I don't think have you ever come to the grips? I don't think you come to the grips of saying, I'm committed to reversing this, to not be the same person. Now, I told you I was going to ask you some harsh stuff, and I know that sounds harsh.
No, it doesn't, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not harsh to me at all. I don't know how to answer that. I want to say I'm committed. I feel committed, but I'm dealing with an obsession that plays itself out 24/7. And so I know somewhere today, I'll have thoughts of using. And so I don't really know what that means. I don't know how to handle that. If I did, I wouldn't be in this situation. I'm trying to do what I can do because I truly, sincerely want to move forward. And I can say in this moment, I have no designs or plans to use. There have been times in the past where I was clean and I used to think, man, it'll be great if I dislocate my knee again. Or it'll be great if I need to get a root canal because I'll get a script, right? And then I'll be able to use. And now that kind of thing, I can tell you today, that scares me because it doesn't matter if it's like, if the doctor gives it to me because I needed it, it'll screw up my thinking all over again, and it'll take me back to square one.
It rewires you. I mean, this girl that I'm friends with, she was a heroin addict. She told me one time, a couple of years into recovery, she was at a shopping center, and she ran across the guy she used to buy from. He walked up to her, started talking to her, handed her 3-4 days supply of heroin.
Right, yeah.
She goes, what she did then, she had it in her hand, she started shaking and crying. She ran to the restroom and she vomited. And she was like emotional wreck for the entire day. Because the way I understood the story, she had to hand her hands to power to destroy herself again. She did. She took it into the bathroom. She flushed it down the toilet along with, whatever she was barfing up. But I mean, if you want to hear about the most rawest existentialist moment I think I ever heard of somebody actually being held the power of their own life and death. And especially as much as she came close to death, really very close. And I hope to God that doesn't happen to you. But I mean, it would be great in some way if you had that happen to you. Because, it would be kind of the flip side of the coin, I guess. I mean, you don't know which way to go.
It would be great if someday that happened to me and I did the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. That's what I'm saying. But I mean,
and like luckily for her, or fortunately for her, however you want to characterize it, that happened when she was ready for it to happen.
Right.
I don't want to be walking down the street right now and be handed heroin.
Right.
And that's why I don't sit here and say yes. Like I'm totally committed to recovery and all that. Like I'm trying to take the steps to stay clean now, and I hope that once I get some clean time under me, then I'll be able to more definitively say that and know in my heart I'm ready for those challenges.
What's the longest time you were clean?
2 to 3 months.
So I mean, it can be done. I mean, but this right now, there's like really, okay, you could take we could take some kind of solace. It's been a few days. But let's face it, until you get more miles on that, so you can be seeing it in the rearview mirror rather than it right up there, right alongside of you. You're still not out of the woods. And it's probably just, the process of recovery, from what I understand, some people I've had friends who are alcoholics, for example, and they said it took for years before they can even buy a bar. Now they can go to a bar and they don't feel the need to engage in that, to drink or anything else. But it took years. I mean, we're talking 15, 20 years to be away from it. The writer Stephen King had to use cocaine quite heavily. I think he was probably addicted to it. And he said he's been clean for years not using that type of drug. Anyway, if you look at some of his movies, I don't know if he's actually been out of the woods on that one. But he said after so many years even, he would have a sudden overwhelming urge for cocaine again, 10, 12 years out from it. So, I mean, I hope that we have a conversation down the road where you've actually now are more committed to remaining clean. And it's like there's more of a distance between you and that. You can look back and see that proverbial rearview mirror. But, I would, from my talking with you, it just seems like it's basically you're kind of flirting with the idea.
I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I am. I'm not flirting. I can sit here and honestly say I have no desire to use right now. I don't want to do that this moment. I just, I look back at my track record like anyone else, and it scares me. I don't have a lot of confidence in my ability to do this. It's not so much my desire as my history that makes me very careful, I guess, in how I answer some of these questions or choose my words.
See, the approach I think is called Neuro-Linguistic Program, or NLP for short. If I'm getting this right because I've read so much on this stuff, but one of their things they tell you how to do is you find a model and you model yourself as much as you can after that model. And basically you don't have anybody around you who went through this in the family or something like this, to my knowledge. Basically, you are going to be the pioneer. You're going to have to become the role model. But there's through a recovery process, I guess, a lot of the therapists and stuff are recovering addicts as well. So you might find somebody who maybe was in a very similar position, maybe basically maybe a copy of you that you can resonate. Because if somebody was like a different ethnicity, different race, you probably couldn't identify them to the degree you would somebody with the same race, same ethnicity. But there's probably going to be some people that are going to have to become basically like right now your family is basically the gatekeeper for you. they're guarding you from this stuff.
True that.
And so, but anyway, I just hope we can, in the future, we'll have conversations where the idea of going back to using it sounds like Jack Nicholson, not Jack Nicholson, no, it was, oh God, what was his name? Dennis Hopper, notorious drug user. And he was several years in recovery, and he was during a conversation, during an interview once, he said, the idea of putting anything into his body now is like disgust him, totally repugnant. And I'd like to see that very soon for you. Like, you'd just like, you don't want to, like my friend, she vomited when it was in her hands. But I mean, I hope that gets to that point for you.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I feel like an asshole for just saying that, but like that's that's where I'm at. Like I know people come out on the other side of it, and I hope to be one.
That's what
I'm not on the other side of it.
The other thing I was going to go with you. I was talking. I forgot. I disengaged brain to get out what I already had in the cache, and then. But anyway, I said the part of neurolinguistic programming also says that one of the premises is somebody else has done this. You can do it as well.
Right.
So that's the reason why you want to find somebody who resonates with you on one level or several levels. Maybe the same physical appearance, same background, similar backgrounds, whatever. But somebody you know that you're not all that much different from, who emerged from the other to the other side on this.
Yeah, I mean, having sort of tried to do this for, having been familiar with recovery for about 3 years, I do know quite a few people that want to help me who have dealt with this sort of thing and who I can turn to. Maybe not someone that fits the T you describe, where I have as much in common with as you think would be most beneficial, and you might be right about that. I don't know if I've met that person, but there are a lot of people I know at this point who I can relate to some extent at least, and it is helpful.
So I think there's tendencies in addiction as well as any part of mental illness. Mental illness, there's like tendencies, there's like but everything's totally, you can't just simply superimpose one like stylus and a perfect fit over the other thing that you're looking at. Like a stylus with the things cut out. You're not always going to have that. It's not a perfect fit, obviously. But I mean, so I don't know if that's all that crucial. I mean, I'm not an expert in addiction. But I just say that according to other things in life, like everybody else has got to have role models, or should have. Like black children should have positive role models who are also black in the future. And it's awfully hard for them to relate to people who aren't black. Because let's face it, each and every group has got their own set of obstacles. And I hope you, whatever it takes, I mean, at some point I'd like to have a conversation with you where it's like you feel like, God, I can't be dismayed that you actually engage in that. Just like, you look back and this is like almost like a totally alien person that you now, that used to be. But I don't know if that's got to be possible or possible or even necessary to recover. I don't, like I said, it's like I'm so curious about this stuff because it's like, I've seen so many people go through it, and I'd like to, a lot of my friends who did it, and a lot of them are gone. A lot of people did use drugs, like oxys and stuff. They died. And I wanted to throttle them. And the thing is, they wouldn't listen. They just wanted the party lifestyle. And after a while, though, the people around it see itself in so much, you get it for callousness towards it. And you say, well, SOB deserved it. He wouldn't listen to anybody. I mean, and that's not really cutting it, but you got to say that just to get, you can't just do
I would say that's true.
Yeah.
No. I mean, if I overdose and die, that's what I deserved.
And it's like, and you don't want to say it because let's face it, to use a cliche, but it's so damn accurate. I mean, nobody is an island. No person's an island. You impact and especially you having a child. Mm-hmm. If you have a family that cares about you. I mean, there's no easy way out of this world. I mean, if you died of an illness that you couldn't escape from, like cancer or something, it's like just totally out of your control, then you'd have to deal with that. But the element that you actually had some control at some point in this, and you didn't follow that, or you didn't take that in your hands, that would cause me a lot of anger. Because I'm a very angry person on the surface anyway. And I would just feel like, then again it comes back to you, like, what did I do? What could I have done differently? Was it something I said? And the recriminations would come to the other people, why you ended up the way you did.
Yeah, I feel bad about that. I mean, I don't know who's dealt with that in my life. we're going to have to cut this short
Yeah.
here, so we can't get into my wife, but I was just going to say I think about that a lot, about how that impacted her. Like what did she blame herself for that she shouldn't have?
Right. We'll put a bookmark in it now. We definitely want to revisit this, though.
Yep.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Yes, sir.